It is quite an honor to say that I have with me the man who is the former national Greco-Roman wrestling champion. He aspired to the heights of becoming a member of the United States Olympic wrestling team. Yes, and of course that's the man we all know as Bob Roop.
Guys, welcome back to the Wrestling Stoop podcast. And very soon we will be joined by the legend himself, the host of the show, Mr. Bob Roop. And of course, I am your co-host, Ray Russell, along for the ride. Had such a fun time on the debut show. I hope you guys did too. I encourage everyone to keep those comments, those likes, those retweets, those shares, those reposts coming. Spread the word that Bob Roop is out here now on the airwaves, guys, talking all about his time in the professional wrestling business. And before we bring Bob back onto the show, just a couple of things to get out of the way so we can get right into the good stuff. And the first one being just a friendly reminder that you guys can listen to the Wrestling Stoop podcast in our sister shows, like the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, guaranteed 100% territory talk each and every time out. Currently covering 2 different projects there on Regional Wrestling, including 1981 in Georgia Championship Wrestling with guest co-host Jamie Ward, as well as 1986 in Bill Watts' UWF territory. Well, I guess Bill's gone national by that point. And we cover those episodes with guest co-host Roman Gomez. You can also listen to the granddaddy of them all, the original podcast here on the brand, talking about the Wrestling Memory Grenade. For the past year or so, we've been covering the year of 1987 in the World Wrestling Federation. I guess you could call it the 1987 WWF project. But now it's coming to a close. We're in the month of December and heading into the year of 1988. Will Hulk Hogan sell the WWF Championship to the evil $1 Million Man, or won't he? Find out in the next couple weeks here on the Wrestling Memory Grenade, again, as we head into the 1988 project for the World Wrestling Federation over there on the Wrestling Memory Grenade. Also, listen to Monday Warfare, The Battles Within. It's Raw versus Nitro, covering the entire history of the Monday Night War, 1 week at a time. Almost through the first year of the ratings war, guys, as WCW has just recently began their reign of 83 weeks on top, thanks in part to the formation of the New World Order. New episodes of Monday Warfare coming very soon, and a couple more new podcasts headed to the network in the next few weeks, month or so. So stay tuned for more details on those shows as they grow closer. And you can listen to all of those podcasts and more as part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Google, and beyond. And you can also follow me and Bob on social media, guys. Head over to Facebook right now. Look up the name Bob Roop. Bob accepting new friends as we speak. And he'd love to speak and hear from all of you guys. Also, you can follow me, Ray Russell, on social media for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. And I'm also constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history all over social media, including you can follow me on Twitter, or X as they call it now. Follow me over there at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And while you're at it, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, guys. YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. Uploading new footage all the time. More than 500 videos right now up there at YouTube and counting. And of course, now would be a superb time to become a WrestleCopia patron. Talking about that $5 all access tier. And you can find us over there at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia. And what do you get as part of that $5 all access tier, Ray? Well, I'm glad you guys asked. You get all of my insanely detailed book-like show notes, talking about pages and pages of show notes for every episode of The Grenade, Monday Warfare, and the Regional Wrestling Podcast. Plus, you'll get early access to many of the podcasts here on WrestleCopia. As our current patrons know, the debut episode as well as this episode of the Wrestling Stoop both dropped 1 week early for patrons only. So yes, indeed, early access to many of the podcasts here on WrestleCopia. Listen days, sometimes more than a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. You'll also get remastered versions of the earliest episodes of the WrestleCopia shows. Includes enhanced sound quality and new content and conversation, originally edited out of the initial broadcast due to time restraint, edited right back into the show. But that's still not all, guys. You also get digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure. Just added 13 new digital downloads this past week alone, mostly focusing on the years of 1976 and 1983 in the history of professional wrestling. Plus, you'll also get random bonus video drops and, of course, our Patreon exclusive watch-along series covering many past WWF and WCW pay-per-views, Coliseum videos, Saturday night's main events, Clash of the Champions, and so much more. And remember, Patreon now offering collections areas, subfolders, making the particular gifts you're looking for that much easier to find. Looking for a digital download? Click on the digital download folder. Looking for one of our bonus videos? Head over to the bonus video folder. You guys get it. And you get all of that for the low, low price of just $5, guys. No subscription, cancel anytime, show your support, give it a try for a month. I think you'll like the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. So please, if you have a few bucks to spare, you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia. And as you can hear from my voice, guys, through sickness and in health, I try to bring you guys the most quality product, providing information and entertainment. So if you can, help me pay some of these bills around here, guys, to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network up and running for the months and the years to come. But all right, for now, that's enough about all of that. Let's get into the meat and potatoes portion of the show, what you guys came here for. Let's bring him back on the show. Welcome back, Bob Roop, to the show. Bob had so much fun last week. Looking forward to week number 2.
Right. Yeah, man, I'm ready to go.
Well, it's good to hear. Hopefully you've had a week to sit and think and listen to that first episode. And I'm sure lots of people hopefully still sending in some feedback on that first episode, but we're just going to keep rolling, guys. Remember last week, I didn't forget, we will touch on it here at the top of the show in just a few minutes, that poor fellow who got in the ring with the likes of Billy Robinson and the Iron Sheik, and maybe Bob was lurking around there somewhere watching what was going on. We'll talk about that. But first, you caught me off guard. We were getting ready to record, and you mentioned a story involving the one and only Hulk Hogan, guys. And Bob, I wasn't really ready for it, so I said, you know what, let's save it for on air. So I don't even know the whole story yet. I just know you mentioned something about maybe saving his life and his career, perhaps, but what you gonna do?
Well, one day at right after it was Wednesday afternoon, we had television taping at the Sportatorium. And right after taping, we had to go jump in our cars. If we were driving, the show that night was in Miami, and the taping was in the early afternoon. So sometimes you wouldn't get out of there until 3:30, 4 o'clock, which means you really had to hightail it. Miami was 250 miles from Tampa, so you really had to hightail it. A lot of times we'd fly, get a private plane. 3 or 4 of us would get together, and it was expensive, but it beat having to drive like a maniac all the way down there. So one day I came out, I was getting ready to leave, and this big blonde guy with long hair and wearing a tank top and beads, had a necklace of beads and beads on his wrist, and came right up to my car and knocked on the window. I put my window down. He says, "Hey man," he says, I'm going to be here Tuesday to work out with you." "Yeah, I just talked to Eddie Graham. He's gonna have me work out with you." And I said, "Okay." Yeah, I said, "I have an idea that let me get back to you on that. Hang around here a minute." So I went back inside and I asked Eddie about it. I said, "What's that about?" And he said, "Yeah," he said, "that guy's a hippie." He said, hair and everything. He said, "I hate him." He said, I want you to stretch him." So I said, "Okay." I went back and I told Terry. He introduced himself as Terry Bollea. I said, "Hey, I just checked. All he wants me to do is discourage you. He's not ready to give you a break of any kind. He wants me to stretch the hell out of you. I said, I'm not going to be here. So if you come down here, I'm not going to be here. Well, he seemed to appreciate that. But he was working at, Terry did. He was working in a band. He was a bass player in a band. And he was working there in Tampa at the time. And over the next couple of weeks, I actually went once. I went by myself. Another time, I took my girlfriend, who later became my wife, and we went out and listened to him play. And we danced a few times to his music. Another time he played in Sarasota. I went out there on a weekend night that we weren't wrestling. I went out and listened to him play. So, I had some little association with him. And then I left, when I left Florida, a few years later, 3 years later, he had been broken into the business.
Right.
And I was booking in Knoxville. I got a call from a guy named Terry Gibbs, who had worked for me in Knoxville.
I know Terry. I used to talk to Terry a lot in the late 90s.
Right. And Terry called me and he says, "Hey, Bob," he said, Terry Bollea is looking for work. He said he's been working out. He took a year off. He's been working out with the weights. He's enormous. He's humongous. He looks great. He said, "Can you book him?" And I said, "No." I said, "Terry," now Terry was down in Tampa at the time. He took a week off. I said, "Terry, do you want me to give you your notice?" He said, "No, why would you do that?" I said, "Because the only way I can hire somebody else is I have to get rid of somebody." I said, we don't have any wrestlers on our program that don't work every night. So, if you want to, I don't have room for them. I said, what I'll try to do, though, Louis Tillett was booking Pensacola.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what I'll do is I'll call Louis and see if Louis can get him in down there. And I did call Louis. I told him about him. And apparently, I'm not sure, but I think that he actually worked there for Louis. So a year or two goes by. We're in Tampa. This is another story. They were having we were running opposition. This is when we'd gone opposition to Ron Fuller in Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
And Florida was sending wrestlers up there to go against us. So we decided to go down to Florida and run opposition against the Florida. We got together with a local wrestler named Ronnie Hill, who promoted the show. We didn't draw anything. It was just more of a symbolic thing that we went down to, okay, you run opposition against us.
Right. I get you.
So while we were there, we discovered they were having a tough man contest. And this was fairly new at the time. So we thought, what if we enter the tough man contest? And then when we're out there, we can say, hey, where are the Tampa wrestlers? Where are the Florida wrestlers? So Ronnie, Bobby Orton, and myself, we entered this tough man contest. That had to do with Terry Bollea. While we were there, we went out clubbing. Maybe later that night, or maybe it was the night before, I went out to club to get a beer. And I saw him. And, he looked great, humongous. I walked up to him, and like I say, I'd known him. As far as I knew, everything I'd done for him had been positive. I walked up to him to say hi. He just snubbed me. He was talking to some girl. He just snubbed me like I was invisible, So I just turned around and walked away, and I've never had any use for him ever since. That's fine. When I think about it, I thought that perhaps he didn't want to be remembered before he'd become a star by this time.
Sure.
So he didn't want to be reminded of his days when he wasn't a star. Maybe he knew I was opposition. That could have been another reason, because that's another whole story. But when we went opposition, every wrestler in the business except Carl Cox that we ran into wouldn't talk to us. They were afraid to talk to us.
Okay.
Yeah, pro wrestlers are afraid to talk to their colleagues because they're working opposition. They were afraid they'd get in trouble with the promoters if they talked to us. So Carl Cox, one time we were driving, a bunch of guys stopped at the gas station. Well, we had pulled in before them, and they pulled in to get gas, and they were out of their car. And, the guys were going in the store to get pop or something before they saw us. And once they saw us, they all hustled back to the car and got ready to take off. Carl Cox was with them. Carl got out, and Carl and I were buddies. Carl got out, and he said, Bob, he said, these chicken crap SOBs they're all too scared to talk to you. But he said, I want to say hi, wish you luck in what you're doing. It was your opposition. He said, I tried to do it, but I couldn't. The guys in my era were just as chicken shit as these guys, so I couldn't get any help either. He said, best of luck to you. Mm-hmm. So, and he was the only guy. The rest of them were afraid to even talk to us, which is, it's just so ridiculous. It's mind-blowing that you'd be, that intimidated.
I don't want to sidetrack you from where you're going here, but I just wanted to go back before we move on. So you kind of would have been the first person in line to stretch Hulk Hogan. And the story goes, it was actually Hiro Matsuda who winds up breaking his leg in order to discourage him. But Hogan did come back, believe it or not, and went on to, have the career that he had. But it's kind of funny to know that you were in that Hiro Matsuda spot first, and you were just honest with him. You went back out and told him, look, man, they don't want you to succeed. If you come here on, let's say, Friday, you're not going to get a job. They're literally telling me to come in here and cripple you to a degree, which is what happens to him. But he does come back, to his own credit, surprisingly. And, the rest is history, as they say. But it's kind of funny to know that, you were initially the one put in that spot, which you had been in the previous times as well with other people to discourage them, if you will.
Right. Well, it wasn't Hulk, Bo, Terry, whatever you want to call it. He didn't come back right away. He stayed. He smartened up. He realized they weren't, it wasn't suitable. He came back later, but that ankle thing that Hero did with him, he did it with me too. The first time we worked out, he did it with me, and it's where I'm down in the referee's position where I'm on my knees and my hands on the mat, like it's an amateur referee's position, it's called, and Hero stood behind me, and then when he dropped his knee on the back of my ankle, like on the Achilles tendon, which that in itself could have ripped the Achilles tendon.
Right.
Then I turned sideways with it, because in wrestling, one thing you learn to do is you go with the pressure. You don't go against it. You go with it. So I turned so that he didn't hurt my ankle. He reached down and grabbed my toe. Well, I had turned to face him by this time. I mean, to face backwards. My body was between us. But he was close enough. I reached up and grabbed his hair. I stuck my thumb on his eye. And I didn't press hard, but I let him know, if you pull up on my ankle, you're going to have a different outlook. And in the very near future, you're going to have a very different outlook on things. And he let go immediately. And within 5 seconds, he started teaching me how to hook. That was the last thing that he ever tried. That was like initiation. And that's what he did to Hulk, to see if he could defend himself.
Okay.
And he couldn't.
So there's insight on the move. We've heard the story for decades. Hulk's told the story. Other people have told the story about him going in there and Hiro Matsuda breaking his ankle or wherever it was down there in his leg. And, he came back and he, eventually became a pro wrestler. But the insight of how it was done and what Hiro did and why he did it, it's a little more than just, cripple this guy. I want to deter him from, coming back. It's sort of a passageway too. Like, can this guy do anything? And I'm going to show this guy, see what he's all about. But I love that you gave us the details of how the move works, that hooking style, that shooting style of trying to cripple the person, what he did. Like, it's never been broken down before like you did it. So that was very cool.
Well, it's a good point, Ray. But again, I'll just one last comment. Mm-hmm. If you know how to defend yourself at all, you know how to avoid that. When they do that, you know what to do. If you don't know how to defend yourself, well, then you get hurt. And so that's what the test was. Also, there's another part to it. Terry had no value to them at the time. They didn't know they had a lot of big muscular guys that never did anything.
Right.
But what is another test was to see if he was hurt, will he come back? And so it was like a double test. Can he defend himself? And if he can't, is he willing to come back and learn how to defend himself? And that's what was going on. That's what was going on.
Well, I mean, like I said, the rest is history, as we all know. He made himself a couple bucks, I think, somewhere along the way. so it all worked out.
He made Vince McMahon $1 billion. Yeah. Yeah, he got some of it too.
So another story I want to touch on real quick before we get back into the career of Mr. Bob Roop. And that story is the poor guy you were talking about. We were talking about Hulk Hogan getting his ankle broken by Hero. Let's talk about this guy you were talking about. Eddie Graham didn't really want this guy to succeed either, maybe, or just maybe really wanted to try him really well. You talked about a line of guys that were coming into the ring to work out with this fellow, this poor guy. Of the likes of the names you dropped were Billy Robinson, Khosrow Vaziri, which was the Iron Sheik. There was somebody else in there too. I felt like was a shooter or an amateur or something. And I know you said maybe Bob Orton as well.
Danny Hodge.
Okay. Well, that enough said.
Yeah.
Danny Hodge
Yeah.
and Billy Robinson and even Sheiky Baby
Yeah.
in the ring at the same
Yeah.
time. Oh, this just doesn't.
Danny,
this can't end well.
Danny, who won a silver medal in the Olympics of wrestling, Khosrow, who took third in the world at amateur wrestling, Billy Robinson, who apparently went to some school in England called Wigan.
The Wigan,
where you
yeah,
learn how
that's
to,
just nasty.
Where you learn
nasty.
how to hook and hurt people. The three of them. When I got there, I got a call that they wanted me to come down to the office. They didn't say why. Just, can you come down to the office? So I said, okay. I drove down there. I went in the back. Charlie Lay was up front. He said, they're waiting for you in the back. When I went back there, Khosrow and Vaziri and Danny Hodge were in the ring shooting amateur style. And within, 30 seconds or so, Danny took Khosrow down in like a takedown. Danny had a single leg that he could take down anybody in the world. He took Khosrow down, and that was it. That was all they were going to try, was see who could take the other one down, apparently, because they stopped after that. Well, this kid showed up, nice-looking kid. He was handsome. He bleached his hair, but it wasn't blonde. It was like white. Had a nice tan. He was well-built, weighed about probably 190 pounds, 5'10". Nice-looking kid. Respectful, appropriate, humble, and he thought he was going to get a tryout. Dick Murdoch happened to be there, too. Murdoch used to live by himself in town. He always come to the office to find out if anything was going on and something that, kind of keep from being, by himself all the time. So he was there watching, too. And Bobby Orton and Bobby Jr. and I came down there together. We were tag team partners at the time. So it started out, Billy Robinson was the first one. He wanted to be first to start with this guy. And
just right into the lion's mouth, right?
Yeah, and so Billy pushed the kid in the ropes and put his hands down. And when the kid put his hands down, Billy went to headbutt him and in the face. And the kid reared back and just shot out his hands and pushed Billy, and Billy fell flat on his butt.
Oh, no.
Now, if I was the kid, I would have kicked him right in the face. Now I'll know it's a shoot. Now, of course, this kid was way too intimidated to do that. What I'm saying is Billy left himself wide open there. So he jumped up and he grabbed the kid. I don't know what he was trying to cover, the fact he'd just been made a. Bobby Orton jumps up. He ran to the ring. He jumped up on the opposite side of the ring. He ran along on the apron all the way around the other side. He goes to headbutt the kid from the side. The kid ducks into it. Bobby smashes his eyebrow into the kid's head, busts open his own eyebrow. I think it took 7 stitches or whatever to get that closed.
Oh, man. This is not going the way I envisioned it. Oh, my.
No. Well, the kid was just defending himself.
Sure.
And I said, there's no way I could stop it. I just said, I don't want any part of this. So I just left. They didn't kill him, as far as I know. I didn't hear of any. I didn't read a paper about
any obituaries.
Any obituaries. But yeah, I wasn't real impressed. I mean, you're bringing down world-class wrestlers to deal with a guy that any high school wrestler could easily handle.
That's what I was going to ask you. Wasn't this overkill? You talk about this kid. He was humble. He didn't have an ego. He didn't walk in there. Some people have those. And you said he was respectful. He was humble. He gets in the ring with these guys. And I mean, look at the, it's like Murderer's Row there, I mean, shit, that's a lot of scary names. Like, it just felt like overkill. Any one of those guys would be more than enough to handle your typical, person walking in there to try out. But all of those guys together, it felt like there had to be more to the story.
You talk about overkill. Yeah. I mean, again, if it was an NCAA champion the size of Andre the Giant, maybe, but yeah, Billy, I found out just this last year. Now, Billy Robinson passed away, so I don't want to badmouth him, but I found out that Billy helped run the breaking in school up there for Vern Gagne. And one of the things Billy liked to do, my good buddy, Baron von Raschke, Jim Raschke is his first name. Jim and I have been friends since 1964. We were both on the All-Army and the All-Service team. It was through wrestling with Jim for just 3 months. All I had behind me was a state championship. I didn't have any college matches under my belt, and I had a high school state championship. And Jim had been third in the world at 1963 in Greco-Roman at the World Games. I worked out with him for 3 months up at West Point on the All-Army team, and we became dear friends to this day. But just working out with him for 3 months, when I went to the Olympic tryouts that year, I took fourth in freestyle and fourth in Greco-Roman. Or let's put it this way, I placed in the top 5. Now, they only took the top 2, but at the Olympic tryouts, Larry Christoph, who we've talked about last week,
right?
Larry won the freestyle, so he was a freestyle, and the Olympics were in Tokyo that year. So Larry was a freestyle heavyweight. Rashke, my buddy, won the freestyle or the Greco-Roman Olympic tryouts. He was a Greco-Roman, but at training camp, the second place guy, what I was told was an illegal move, and hyperextended Jim Rashke's elbow. Oh. So he was hurt. He couldn't wrestle. The other guy went and wrestled in the Olympics, Jim's place. But anyway, Jim was telling me about training. I always he got heat with me. Jim Rashke, third in the world in 1963.
Yeah.
Last week, I told our listeners and you the way I was treated when I started. I had Hiro Matsuda tried me for 20 seconds and immediately started training me accepted me as a trainee to learn how to work, to get in the ring. Mm-hmm. Vern made Jim Rashke third in the world, higher than I ever did. Third in the world in Greco-Roman. He made Jim Rashke referee and pull the ring for a year.
Wow.
Now, and Jim's also a college graduate, by the way. So that always bugged me. What does a guy have to do to earn his spurs? Being third in the world isn't enough. Yeah, I mean, just to be trained.
You think Vern would, have respect too for that, him being a former, amateur as well, probably as big as he was in the amateurs, Vern Gagne. And then here comes Jim Rashke, who I'm sure he did respect because he used him for decades seemingly and gave him title belts and things like that. But it's kind of odd. You're right. But these promoters, they all have their own way of breaking guys in, I guess. You're right, though. It's silly that, and I'm not going to talk about credentials as far as you versus Baron von Raschke goes here. But at the same time, you're right. Here in Florida, let's just say your guys are on the same level. You get to do it this way. He's doing it that way. So maybe you made the right call starting down there in Eddie Graham's territory.
You know what? I wouldn't have lasted in Minnesota.
Right.
Yeah. If I went to training camp and somebody like Billy Robinson slapped me or something, I'd beat the crap out of him. I would have. I worked 13 years to be standing here as an Olympian, and you're going to make me degrade me? You're going to put me down?
Yeah.
I don't think so. And you can only be put down, folks. This goes for everybody. You can only be put down if you agree to be put down. That's it. That's true. There's no way anybody can put you down. They could try, but unless you agree to it, you can't be put down. That's always been my attitude. I said earlier last week, I said I had ultimate respect for people who were already in a business because I didn't know anything. But likewise, if we're training and we're doing amateur wrestling, we're doing push-ups and squats and all that, I'm up there. I've already done all that for years and years and years. I don't have to start at the bottom at that level. Yeah, but Jim, to his credit, we talked about it last year because it had bothered me for years. But Jim Rashke, we meet every year at the Hall of Fame at Waterloo, the Tragos Thetis Hall of Fame, and Jim and I think I'm 6 left on alive of the inductees, and I think Jim is the 4th or maybe 3rd. There's only about that's still left alive. I mean, bless all the guys that are gone, but anyway, I started getting more attention. I didn't get any attention at all when all the really famous guys were still alive and showing up.
Right.
But now that a lot of them are gone, so my secret is just hang around long enough. If you're persistent, you'll finally get noticed. But
by attrition.
Yes, but like I say, Jim never minded. But yeah, that was Billy's thing up there was putting guys through Ole Anderson tried out up there. And Danny Hodge was working there, and all those guys stretched him before he ever got in the business. So
no wonder he was so miserable. No, I kid, guys.
he could be. He could make other people miserable. He was a Ole, and I respected Ole. I liked him. He shot from the shoulder. You know, he didn't pull any punches. If you were okay, then that was fine. Yeah, that's the way you're supposed to be. If you weren't okay, he would tell you. Yeah, big pile of crap.
I believe that.
Get out of here.
All right, so we'll. I know you've got a lot of Ole stories, so we'll save those for maybe not just another time, but multiple times down the road. I know a few of them already. I've already heard a few from you, and I look forward to more. I'm sure you have endless stories involving Ole Anderson, which I know the listeners can't wait for. But right now, Bob, if it's okay with you, let's go all the way back. Last episode, for those who've already listened to it, you guys know where we ended. We talked about you breaking into the business, getting ready for your very first match in the ring. And if you guys haven't listened to it, what are you waiting for? Go back and listen to episode number 1. But we're going to continue on now, Bob, with your career, which actually starts here in 1969, in the summer of 69, I do believe.
Right. After graduation, which was in June, I loaded up and came down to Florida, drove down to Florida from Michigan, I believe. Got an apartment and started training. And I don't remember the date of my first match. I should. We can probably find it. But there's a funny twist to the first match. The last time when we talked about coming down and having a look-see with me and Larry Christoph.
Mm-hmm.
No, I take it back. It wasn't look-see. It was while I was still training. I hadn't broken in yet, but I was still training. I was asked to go to Jacksonville to do just a walk in the ring and be introduced type thing, just to introducing an Olympian, that sort of thing. And they had me ride with Dick Dunn and Don Carson. I had not either one of them. The Imperial Room Lounge I mentioned earlier, it was the place. Yeah, the party place on Tuesday night after the matches. But the parking lot also was not far from the highway going east towards Jacksonville from Tampa, across the state. Jacksonville was on one coast and Tampa was on the Gulf, the Tampa Bay there. So I got in the car in the back seat of Dick Dunn was driving. Don Carson is a heck of a ribber. I didn't know that at the time.
I've never heard that about him, but I could see that just based on his personality and his promos.
Oh, he's unbelievable. I mean, he's funny. I lived with him later in my career. I lived with him for 6 months. What a riot. Anyway, these are two veterans. I'm a newcomer. Like I said, I felt like I was a private in the Army and I'm riding with two majors, and they're way up there. So I'm not saying anything until I get spoken to, if they ask me something or if they want to talk to me. Well, they ignored me the entire way, coming and going. And what they talked about was how amateur wrestlers, never make it in pro wrestling. Never. Yeah. And they're talking back and forth just like I'm not even there. They say, yeah, it's funny. Those guys just never make it. It doesn't matter how good they were amateur. They're just absolute crap as pro wrestlers. And, by the time we got 20 miles down the road, I was burning. I was so hot. But what am I going to say?
Right.
What am I saying? I haven't made it yet, so I don't know. Now, the card that night should have told me because Jack Briscoe was on top and Dale Lewis was on the card.
Who were huge amateur wrestlers, right?
Huge, yeah, so I should have picked it up right there. But they kept it up on the way back, and neither one of them ever said a word to me. I mean, I don't mean hello, get out of the car, you got to stop, nothing.
Well, they had you smoking hot, man, so you couldn't see the forest for the trees. You didn't realize, wait a minute, but Jack Briscoe's main eventing tonight. Well, all right.
So, all right, let's fast forward a couple of weeks now, and maybe a month. I'm having my first match in Fort Myers, Florida, and my opponent is Dick Dunn, the guy driving the car that night. Now, Duke Kiyomuka actually came down with me that night to Fort Myers, rode in the car with me, because they knew the way I was acting and training. They knew I was nervous. I think I was. You're going on stage to be an actor, or, but if you're, if you're new at it, you don't know much about acting. I was just nervous. It had to do with wanting to give a good performance and, not having any experience whatsoever. I was less nervous when I went out against a Russian in the Olympics than I was going out the Russian was about 6'8", about 350 pounds, a former world champion. I was less nervous going out against him than I was against Dick Dunn. So I'm pacing back and forth in my dressing room. Now, let me set it up. The matches in Fort Myers were in a National Guard armory. In the armory, they have these great big, they take one section of the building and they section it off to make offices. But instead of making separate walls, what they do is they have these big sliding plastic partitions that you can draw back all the way to the wall and open up the whole room. Or if you saw them close, they click. They click in the middle. They're made of like a heavy rubber plastic type material. And, they effectively, they're not soundproof, but they effectively partition off the rooms. So they had these things closed when we got there. The baby faces went in the office down at one end of this long room, and the heels went in the door down at the other end, so they could come out of different doors to go to the ring. It's always awkward when you're coming out the same door to go to the ring.
Right,
people say, "Well, you're together,
hanging out together." Right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but meanwhile, you could open up the partition in the middle, and you could talk. You could talk over your match. The booker could give you your finish, or whoever. Sometimes the booker didn't come. The referee would have the finishes, but tell you what you were going to do. That's what a finish is, folks. They tell you what you're going to do at the end of your match. Meanwhile, Duke's down there because he knows I'm nervous. I'm pacing back and forth in the dressing room. And Duke is saying, "Come on, Bob." He said, "You got this. It's not, don't, Bob." And so Don Carson was the first one. He opened the door. He saw me pacing back and forth. And so he closed it again. He came back and he opened it again. I'm still pacing. And all of a sudden, I see Dick Dunn. He reaches over. He calls, "Hey, Dick, come over here." He comes over and he calls Dick Dunn. I see he's talking to him. And what he was telling Dick Dunn, he said, "You see that group? This is his first match.
Right.
He doesn't know anything about the business. He doesn't know how to work. He's probably just an accident waiting to happen. He might kill you by accident, but here's the problem. You see how he's walking back and forth? I heard him tell Duke that he was mad at you about that car trip you took him on where you said he was no amateur wrestlers ever made it. That's why he's walking like that. He's so mad he wants to kill you. And Duke Kiyomuka's trying to talk him out of it."
And Don Carson playing both sides of the fence there. He's ribbing you, and then he gets to rib Dick Dunn out of the rib that he did with Dick against you.
Oh, he's ribbing
so
the heck
Carson had
Dick
to have been enjoying himself there, just working up everybody on every side.
Well, I didn't hear what he was saying,
Right.
So to me, I was just nervous about the match. But, I kept walking, and Carson was periodically calling back and say, "Hey, look, he's still walking. Oh man, he's going to kill you." So I went out to the ring first and got in the ring, and the referee came out, a guy named Joe Flaherty, and he said, "Dick Dunn wants to know if you're going to kill him before he'll come out to the ring." I said, "Well, kill him, no." I said, "I'll try not to." I said, I'm worried about killing myself. And so he called Dunn out to the ring. He got in. He was supposed to be the heel. I'm the babyface, the big Olympian, all that. He got in the ring like Godzilla was waiting for him, And he came up and he was singing, "Row, row, row your boat," like trying to be as innocuous and as innocent and all that as he could. And we had a, I don't remember the match, so that means it was okay. Matches that went well. I mean, there's guys I work with, very famous guys. I never remember working with Jody Hamilton, Assassin, and I saw a match the other night where I was his tag team partner, and I don't remember. But
so many years. I mean, you guys were working 7 days a week, so many years, many people. I mean, I can see how sometimes it escapes you. I've had situations like that in my life where like this happened, and then I see proof that it happened, but it's like, wow, okay. I get you.
If they went well, I just forget it. So anyway, that was inadvertently through Don Carson. That was my payback on Dick Dunn. Like for at least a half hour before the match, he was petrified. And I tell you what, 10 years later, when I'm no longer the Olympian, at least not in conditioning and and ability, because I've had 10 years of not training. When Dr. Death Steve Williams broke in,
right,
and I was booked with him in the Superdome in New Orleans on a show for Bill Watts. Let me think. That was 1981. So I would have been in business.
82. I don't think Doc started till 82. He was still in college at the time too, but he was coming in between.
Okay, it might have been early. It might have been. Yeah, it could have been at 82. I worked for Watts from 81 to 82. So
right.
on my birthday. So yeah, it probably would have been 82. But he was so nervous. He was so nervous because it was a Superdome that I had the same situation. It was just like me. Now, I had not said, ribbed him or said anything about, he's never going to make it in the business.
Right.
But he was so nervous that one of the things he did, I did a spot where I had him give me a tackle, and I took a bump, and before I could get up, he ran over, and he grabbed me by my right arm. It's the only time in my entire career that somebody grabbed me by my right arm. You just don't do that. You always grab the guy by his left arm.
Unless you're in Mexico.
Well, fortunately, I never worked. So he whipped it into the ring, and it's lucky I didn't trip over my own feet and take a big bump. So what I did is instead of coming off the ropes, I had no idea what he was going to do. So I actually took a bump through the ropes onto the floor, and I waved the referee over. I told the referee, tell him to calm the F down. Calm the F down.
And for anybody who saw Doc in his prime, I mean, he was a lot more trim later on in the 80s. That early Dr. Death, man, he was quite a burly dude. Not saying he was never not scary, but he was a big dude in 1982.
Oh, he was a tough guy. He was a nice guy. Don't get me wrong. When I got to talk to him, but he wasn't real complicated. He was basically what he said he was. He was a football player and a wrestler who had full speed ahead. And, he was serious about doing his best. That's why he's so excited in the ring.
I don't want to get you off topic, but it made me laugh because I have another territory show. I do regional wrestling podcast. And one of the co-hosts there, Roman Gomez, we do 1986. And Bill Watts's, it was UWF territory by then. And I was just watching a match the other day, and this is 86. Doc is he knows how to work now. But he was wrestling a guy by the name of Jack Victory. And Jack, I don't know if he just wasn't prepared, he wasn't ready, he was kind of like, I don't know, just not paying attention. But Doc came at him with a worked shoulder tackle, and even his worked shoulder tackle hit Jack so hard, he left the mat and bounced into the ropes. I had to pop out loud. I was like, holy shit, that was not a worked bump. Oh, man, it was hilarious. So I can only imagine Doc, nervous, all the nerves running in him, and at the speed he was going in 82. I can only imagine.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. It was scary. I thought, when he threw me in the ropes by the wrong arm, I thought, I have no clue I didn't tell him to do anything. I didn't have a clue what he was planning. So I thought, I think I'm going to take a break here and get out of the ring and see if I can get him calmed down.
Yeah, there you go.
Once I did.
That is a grizzled vet move right there. Wait, let's just slow things down. Calm down. I'm not your enemy.
Yep. Once I got him, I got back in the ring. I had him get a hold of a headlock or something where I could talk to him and calm him down. But back to how Dick Dunn must have been feeling.
Sure.
Now, Dick Dunn didn't have, even 10 years earlier, Dick Dunn wasn't an Olympian. When he was going out against me, he didn't have any chance whatsoever.
Right.
So if I was to decide I was going to rip his leg off, probably what was going to happen.
Now, how did they start you? Would you have went over in that first initial match, or was Dick Dunn on the decline already? Okay. I was just curious.
No, they didn't have me slaughter, but I beat him. They were grooming me because of the Olympic background. And see, it's another thing that bugged me about Jim Raschke. That year that he spent doing that could have been one of his prime earning years at the other end of his career.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. If he'd have used that first year, learn how to work, then he'd have had And his prime earning years might have been like in today's money, $300,000 or $400,000. So that's one thing that bugged me about it. It cost him a lot of money. With me, no, I didn't have to go through any. They were planning on using the Olympic background, and they knew that I was okay enough that, in 6 months, a year, within 3 or 4 months. I mean, I thought I had. If I was, first of all, I didn't know how to call a match or lead a match because I was a babyface, and the heels called the matches. But I remember the first time I went to Miami, or one of the times I went to Miami, I was with Matsuda, and they didn't want to beat him or beat me, so they had us go 20 minutes through called a Broadway. We went 20 minutes through. I thought 20 minutes, oh my God, I got 3 minutes worth of stuff that I can repeat over and over and over again. That means I'm going to have to do it 7 times, in 20 minutes. And I was, and in Miami, you're in separate dressing rooms, so I couldn't even ever talk to a hero. But we went out there, and it was, the time went like that. He was a real pro. The good guys, and I learned how to do it myself, but you can keep guys that don't know what they're doing. You can make them look like they're okay just by being in proximity, like close enough to where they'll get their hands up, and you can lead them around, back up a little where they, you tell the referee to tell them to follow you, and and that way you can kill some time while they're calming down.
Right.
The other way is to get a hold, or have them get a hold, and have them take you over in a headlock and talk to them for a while from underneath. You can just tell them, hey, look, I don't know if your mother's in the audience or whatever, but don't worry about it. It's going to be okay.
And that goes back to what you were talking about on the first episode about don't hold that headlock too hard, because then I can't really hear what you're saying either.
Yeah. So that first match was again a funny story that came out of it. That because of the rib, Doug got the rib paid back. That's what I mean about Carson being a great ribber.
But who got Don back? Did Don ever get ribbed back out of all of this?
No, he was well, not that I know of. He was pretty slick, but he was also good natured about it. Yeah. He wasn't mean. He wasn't hateful.
Yeah, I've only seen Don. I mean, I never knew him personally. I've only seen his promos and things as a manager and stuff when he was with Stomper and stuff like that. But he just comes off as somebody like you would explain him here on the show. He just comes off like that. So I could see Don Carson being that guy. So it makes me laugh.
Yeah, he was sincerely, I mean, I don't know how you'd think it. He was sincerely a guy that was seemingly always in a good mood, always ready. He was always smiling, ready to laugh. And I lived with him for 6 months. I never saw him get off that character. So, right. He was fun to be around. He'd do all kinds of things. I remember one time I was laying in an apartment. I'd hurt my ankle or something. I was in there just not underwear, but I had like a bath towel type thing that I was wearing because I was laying on a couch. He went over across the apartment complex. We lived in an apartment complex in Knoxville. There was probably, 100 apartments. And he went over to a party across the way. And all of a sudden, the door opened, and in his apartment, I'm laying there. This pretty girl walks in, and she said, "Oh, hi, Bob." And she started looking at the fish. He had a fish tank. She started looking at the fish tank. And while she was looking at him, she just happened to get up on her tiptoes, and she was wearing real short shorts and just a bikini top. And she's wiggling her butt at me. And I'm thinking, wow, there's a nice looking girl. But I didn't react. I didn't have a clue what was going on. And so after a few minutes, she took off. And I waited about 10 minutes later. Someone else comes by, another girl, doing the same thing, flirting around and whatever. Yeah, he was sending girls over to for me to, have fun with if I wanted to. I didn't have a clue. Well, that was the kind of guy he was, Right. It wasn't a rib. It wasn't a rib. It was just, he was a good guy.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I had friends like that when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you told that story. I've heard you in the past mention your first match was with Dick Dunn. Online, the earliest I could find was August 11th against Duke Kiwanuka, but the details clearly there you have vivid memories of that first match with Dick Dunn, which had to have, I guess, taken place before August 11th. I'll have to dig into old Florida ads and see if I can come up with the exact date for that show. Where was the Dick Dunn match at?
Fort Myers.
Fort Myers. Okay. I know where I'll be looking. That's very cool.
I also remember working an early match, and you mentioned John Heath earlier, working a match with John Heath and O'Galley, E-A-U, I think I pronounce it O or O. I think it means water. Oh, anyway, O'Galley.
Mm-hmm.
And little bitty building, maybe 100, 200 people there. I was working against Coach John Heath in like an early first or second match. And all we did was amateur stuff. You know, John was an amateur wrestling coach, so he knew. And so we were doing like takedowns and stuff. And, you know, I thought it was really cool.
Having some old school fun.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. You know, we were doing takedowns and duck unders and rides and sit outs and all this stuff. And about 7-8 minutes, we were like tied up or we were sparring. It got quiet. I heard this voice from the back say, "When are we going to see some real wrestling?" That's all they'd been saying.
Oh, the irony.
Was real. Yes, the irony. We were so John had me get a headlock. That way, Big Mouth sat down. But yeah, I thought that was funny, right?
Yeah, it's a good story.
Yeah.
You guys are out there giving them real wrestling, if you will, and well, they're trained that way. They're wrestling fans. That's what they know.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it can be said most pro wrestling fans really never were amateur wrestling fans, so they really didn't follow any of that. So to speak. Maybe they watched it in the Olympics or something when they were watching the Olympic events on TV or whatever the case may be. Or in general, those are two very different animals. We talked about that in the first episode. How you would paved out a long career in the amateurs, but you knew when you got to the pros, this is a different place, and I need to shut up and listen, so to speak.
Well, you know, while we're on the subject, the term mark, a lot of the boys would talk about the fans as marks, and I'm not trying to suck up here or play favorite. Let me explain my rationale. I don't like that because marks, like on the carny, that's the term from the carny.
Right,
on
it's from the carnivals. Right.
A mark was somebody who would spend $8 to win a $2 teddy bear for his girlfriend, or somebody who tried to throw dimes on a plate and would spend $5 and would never win, or whatever. You know, somebody who was foolish in terms of spending their money. And I always said, well, how can unless you feel what you're offering the fans with your performance is worthless, they're buying something. They're not buying peg and a poke. They're getting entertained. They're getting good matches. You know, they're getting what they're paid for. And so I don't consider them marks, you know, and because I just felt it was, I think the people that are supporting you, you got to show a little bit of concern, you know, a little bit of gratitude for. I mean, why denigrate them? And again, I'm not trying to curry favor, but to me, the ability to be able to have people that would speak to you if they saw you on the street, even if they said, "Hey, Bob, you know, you're going to get your butt kicked this week," they would still be civil to you on the street. And then in the wrestling arena, they'd be screaming at you like they hated your guts. I always appreciated that combination. You know, they could separate the performance from real life.
Right.
And so, you know, I didn't want everybody hating me for real. I mean,
not a good idea.
Yeah.
Especially in certain southern territories.
Oh, God. Yeah. Ernie Ladd went to the South as a heel, and he used to do interviews like, "Yeah, you have that." He'd tell Gordon Soley, he'd say, "Yeah, you have that white boy come down the ring. I'm gonna kick his butt." And you know, here's a guy, a black man, a great athlete, Hall of Fame, San Diego Charger, a football player.
Yeah,
great pro, and here he's coming to the South, you know, and just be as a heel. Very few guys of color came to the South as heels because they already had with prejudice, like racial
they already
bias.
Had that racial heat, you, for lack of a better term, back in those days. I get you.
Yeah.
So
that's why I respect Ernie so much. But got off track here a bit.
Ernie only cared about that one color, right? I believe the color green.
Yeah.
That's what Ernie was all about. Oh, very cool. Yeah, I never really thought about that a whole lot. How many, of the black athletes that came down there were the baby faces a lot of the time, because the heels probably did. Ooh, can't imagine how rough it could have been, certainly in certain territories, especially. Crazy back in those times to think about a lot of stuff. And we closed last episode talking about Sputnik Monroe and what he did for segregation in some of the territories. And so it's just really interesting to see how everything changed over time, though. And you were there, like you got to watch it change.
Yeah, I did. The legislation, equal rights stuff was in the mid '60s, so it was starting to take effect during the '70s, and you were having some integration of schools. Although there was, I don't want to get into politics, but there'd been some politicking going on that allowed southern states to be real slow at integrating their schools, but still it was better. It had gotten better, so that's a step forward. Yeah, that's the real unfortunate part, but that's the way it is. You can't have a country like ours without having all different kinds. We're not all the same type, and the fact that we can hopefully try to get along with one another, and
right.
You don't necessarily have to accept it, but you tolerate it because people have a choice. They have. If I want people to respect my opinion, I have to respect theirs, even if I don't like it. So,
I had some notes here about some things in regards to that, but you kind of just covered them for me, so I really appreciate that.
Of course.
But I also have some names here for you I want to run by you that you may have encountered there in your very early time in the Florida territory. Maybe if you have anything you want to share, any of these names, I'll run them by you, and we can get a few things on. Maybe some more stories. Who knows?
Okay.
You want to tell everybody about a fellow by the name of Don Curtis?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I almost mentioned him a minute ago. I think I had one of my first 3 or 4 matches with Don. And again, because he had an amateur background, he wrestled in college. And we had a good match. He was an old pro, and he was able to lead me around. So we had a decent match. I don't remember what we did at the end, but I do remember working with him. Yeah, Don very early became a real favorite of mine. I would work in Jacksonville, and if I was booked in Tallahassee the next day, if I had driven my own car, Don would ask me to stay over and spend the night with him and his wife Dottie, spend the night with them, and then I could drive up to Jacksonville or to Tallahassee the next night from Jacksonville. And I did that, and he had a keg of beer, one of the cooler type things, had a spigot on and everything.
Right.
Had a keg of beer in his living room.
All right. All right, Don.
Yeah. And he and Dottie were just, they weren't real like diehard wrestling people. They were like regular folks and just had a great sense of humor, both of them. I just had the best time over there. They made me feel like $1 million. So I got to know Don real well. And then, you ever hear of Mr. TREE-rific?
I don't believe so.
Gordon Soley got me a gig early I think it was in that first year or two. The Florida Forestry Association was looking for a spokesman.
Okay.
And they came up with the idea of this, the Jolly Green Giant, the giant standing and up above
Sure.
the little girl.
Sure.
Well, this was like a takeoff on that, but it was Mr. TREE-rific.
Mr. TREE-rific.
TREE-rific, yes, for the Florida Forestry Association. So I had this suit made up of green velvet. It was like a onesie. It was zipped up the back, had a big T on the front, and I wore sandals with lace ups to the knees like gladiator shoes. And I was Mr. TREE-rific. I posed with my hands on my hips, and I thought I might make some money with it. But I did things like, I was with Gordon Soley. He was the one that came up with it. He got the gig. And we ended up, one thing we did, we ended up at Governor Claude Kirk. We were in his office one day for a bunch of presentations. And I had the duty of handing him a check from the Florida Forestry Association for, I don't know, $20,000, $50,000, whatever. It was like a big wooden check. And I was going to hand it to him. The press was there. They were taping and shooting pictures. I was going to hand him the check. And Smokey the Bear, there was a guy doing a Smokey the Bear gimmick. He had on the bear head and all that with seeing out the eyes. So Smokey and I were talking before it was time, and we were supposed to walk up to the governor together and he was going to go on one side and I was going to go on the other. And so when we were walking up, Smokey got treacherous. And when we got just about 3 feet from the first step, he hit me with an elbow and took off, took an extra step, and started to hustle up there. He wanted to get up there first. Unfortunately, with his eyes being, I didn't have anything over my head.
Right.
I could see that first step. He couldn't. So he hit the first step. He took a bump and broke his head.
Oh, man. Wow.
Well, I'm sorry. If he hadn't elbowed me, I'd feel bad about it.
Well, there's a story I didn't expect to come out today on the show. Learn something new every day. Please tell me there are still pictures out there of Mr. Tree-rific somewhere.
There are, but the leads up to Don. This leads up to Don.
Okay.
The Florida later that year. There was another one. They had their convention at a place about 50 miles south of Tallahassee, where they had a parade, and I was on a float with Miss Universe.
Wow.
She was so pissed off to be on that float.
I guess.
With me.
I suppose.
Oh God. Oh, I tried. I wasn't trying to hit on her or anything, but I tried to be appropriate. Sure. She didn't want to talk to me. She thought, "Oh my God!" I said, "Miss America, Miss Universe, whatever I am." I thought I didn't realize things were going to get this tacky, but. And then they had their yearly convention from all over the country. They had it in Florida that year at the Fontainebleau in Miami Beach. So Don Curtis came and picked me up and flew me down there in his private plane. I don't know if it was his or if he rented it, but anyway, he flew me down there to make an appearance. All I was going to do is I got up on a little cabana stand about 2 feet high, and I made a speech about welcome to Florida Forest Association, just a little spiel. And, I had my costume on, of course. Well, when I got back to my room, and I had a room there at the hotel where I had changed. When I got back there, the thing zipped up the back. I couldn't get out of it.
Stuck.
And Don, I couldn't find Don. So, yeah. But, yeah, Don was a good guy. I had taken on a guy in Jacksonville. There was a guy in the audience that kept challenging everybody. So I went in one time. One of the partners in the business, Lester Welch, was there that night. He told me to break the guy's leg. And I just, before I went out there, I just told him, well, if you want to do that, you do it. Well, I went out there and I took the guy down pretty quickly and I put him in a whole abdominal, it's like the abdominal stretch standing. It's called the guillotine in amateur wrestling.
Right, yeah.
Which will give you an idea what kind of hold it is, guillotine. It doesn't take your head off, but it does. It makes you wish your head was gone because it hurts so bad. So I put this guy in the guillotine. It puts all this stress on the arm that I got up in the air over his head and stretching back. This guy was double jointed. I got his arm all the way up there, and he just went all the way through with it and came back to starting position. So that wasn't going to work. So I ended up going about 7 or 8 minutes with him, and wasn't able to do anything really with him. I hadn't been trained yet with all these hooks and things. So a couple weeks later, or maybe a month or two later, the guy was back because he had done okay with me. He wanted back. They asked me to go out there and cripple him or something. I refused to do it. So Don went out there, and Don had the same problem I did. He went about 3 or 4 minutes, and nothing was happening. I mean, we go through. Wrestlers can put on a deal where you got a guy beats you in 10 seconds. You're bloody and dying in 10 seconds. So here it goes 3 or 4 minutes. Don's not able to do anything. So Don pushed him in a corner and then reared back and grabbed his eye and acted like the guy had poked him in the eye. And he wanted to put him and smacked him. And the guy got out of the ring, got out of the ring and took off, which was smart. The guy didn't really poke him in the eye. But that was Don's way of saying, I know I'm not going to be able to do anything except kill my own credibility as a pro wrestler if I don't do something with this guy.
Right.
So that's what he did. So, yeah, let me think. I don't think I got anything else on Don, not right this second.
Sure, no, I just, anything you can think of. That's pretty cool. Good stories. I got a few more names here. We'll try to get a couple of them in. If you think of anything else, we can, close out the show with whatever you want to talk about. I had Dale Lewis here on the list. Of course, you mentioned already, a former amateur himself and turned pro. Dale never really got to that Jack Briscoe level, but he was certainly a hand in the ring. He knew what he was doing. I don't know how much you were really around him or not in the pros.
Yeah, I meet a guy that's been 2 Olympics, Pan American Games champion. I have all the respect in the world, except we're not in that genre anymore. We're not in the amateurs. We're in the pro now.
Right.
I know in my matches with him, even though I beat him, I wasn't really congratulated by the fans very much. Whereas, like I say, even when I wrestled Frankie with Kane,
Okay, right.
Mephisto,
right, yeah.
even though I got beat, fans would say, "Oh, way to go!" But like I had credibility. So Dale, I think he might have been in the twilight of his career when I was there with him.
Right.
I know that Jack and I were working out, doing takedowns and practicing takedowns at the Jack Briscoe and I were doing takedowns at the Sportatorium, and Dale wanted to get involved, former amateur and all that. And he came down, but he found out just like I found out 10 years later. After being away from the amateur mat for 10 years, you should go nowhere near it for any reason whatsoever.
Okay.
Because if you get on there with somebody who's fresh and in shape, they'll kill you. Doesn't matter. They're not that good at all.
Right.
You blow up in about 30 seconds, and then you're just chopped meat. So Dale had a difficult time when he came to work out with us, and that was the last time he did that. But I went over his house a couple times, and he barbecued. He'd married an Australian girl and brought her to this country, and he was a good guy. I know what. I got another Dale Lewis story.
Okay.
Dale Lewis, I heard this is another way that guys used to mess with me about you amateurs. Dale had taken on a guy, I think in Tampa, a Mark. This guy was from somewhere in the Caribbean. And Dale had taken him on. Dale had the gimmick of, if you can beat me, you get $1,000, I think. I think it was $1,000 challenge if they could beat it. Well, the guy didn't beat it, but Dale couldn't beat him either in 10 minutes. So it was embarrassing. The guy apparently wasn't very big. So I kept heard that over and over again, because the boys will talk about a shoot, a real match, because that's completely different from what we normally do.
Right.
And Dale does this in front of an audience, a live audience. So somehow, I don't know why, I didn't have anything to do with it, but somehow this guy came back, and he was going to go again. I went against him. Well, I had heard that, I'd heard that he went, it'd been for maybe 5 years before, but he went, 10 minutes with Dale Lewis. I figured the guy maybe knew something. The guy was about 170 pounds, about 5'9", lean. He wasn't like out of shape blubbery, but I grabbed him, picked him up, did a suplex with him on top of his head, put the sugar hold on him. He was out in about 18 seconds.
Wow.
So because I was nervous, I thought this guy knew something.
Right.
I didn't want him to embarrass me. Folks out there listening, Ray and I have already talked that we both faced up to the fact that I can't stay on subject, and these stories keep coming up that I all of a sudden go take a segue and say, "Oh, you thought you were on this path, now we're on this path." Let's go back to taking on marks in the ring. My first real match. I talked earlier about being a Sputnik in a row, training me, and hanging around at his apartment, just being around this really interesting character. There was a guy that lived in Sputnik's apartment complex. This guy was about 5'10", about 180 pounds. He was pudgy. He wasn't any kind of athlete at all. And he was like a mark. He was a fan. Not a mark, I should say that, but he was a fan. Sputnik was real open with, he didn't expose his business, but this guy asked me something. I showed him something like a tie-up or something. So 2 or 3 weeks later, I knew him. He was around all the time. I see him at the pool and all that. So 2 or 3 weeks later, I get to Tampa, to the building at Fort Hester, or the Armory, for the matches, and Skippy Gossett, who's Eddie Graham's brother, comes up to me and says, "Bob, there's this guy in the audience who's claiming he wrestled you and beat you." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Show me the guy." Well, he pointed to, he said, "Guy sitting over there in the middle of the first row on that side." Well, it was this guy. Oh, I was hot. I hear he's telling people he beat me. So I went down there. I said, tell him I'm going to go down to the ring. So I went down there and challenged the guy. I said, get in there. I got the microphone. I was hot. I was stupid too, but I was hot. I got the microphone and I said, oh, you've been telling people you worked out with me and beat me? Well, come in here and beat me again. So he got in the ring, and I had not learned any hooks yet. And I tried to do things with him, and he got to the ropes, and I had him one time. I had him by the head, and my option was the only thing I could do to him was break his neck. And for a second, I thought about it. I thought about it because I was feeling such pressure. So what I had to do is I had to let him go. I couldn't. I think I pinned him, but I had to let him go. And he got out of the ring and went back to his seat. Now think about that. Hiro Matsuda. I beat Hiro Matsuda in there the week before in 10 minutes. And I go with this guy, and he gets out and says, no.
Yeah, I guess it's so,
oh my God, you talk about humiliating, and so, but they realized, Bob doesn't know what to do. So shortly thereafter, I was given a blind date with Matsuda, and
crash course, huh?
Yes, I learned a hook. And I never had that problem again. And we'll get into the hooking part, but one of the ways they trained me was they had started, I don't know if they were doing it before, but they were advertising, if you want to get in pro wrestling, come down to the Armory and sign up, and we'll give you a tryout. And what they were doing is they were getting all kinds of guys. I wrestled as many as 5 or 6 guys in one day that would think they were getting a wrestling tryout. And my instruction was just to beat them. Nobody said break their leg, but to beat them. Now, there's something that Eddie Graham did way too many times. One of the reasons I quit doing it was that if the guy wasn't marked, if he wasn't bleeding anywhere, didn't have anything broken, a lot of times the guys would get out of the ring, they would be all spaced out because I had put the sugar hold on them, and they had been unconscious. It's just like the sleeper. It works like the sleeper.
Right.
They'd been unconscious. So I woke them up, and one time this guy was out so quick, I kept the hold on him for like 10 seconds, and by the time I noticed his fingernails were turning blue, I realized he'd been out for a while. I didn't know how to wake him up at that time. If Matsuda hadn't been there, I would have killed the guy. But Matsuda got him up, and just like they do with a sleeper hold, he gave him the external heart massage with the stiff hand in the back, whap him on the back.
See,
and
I always wondered where that came from, because as a kid, I thought that was nonsense. Like, how do you knock a guy out and then wake him up by a quick jolt in the back? But that was actually a legitimate way to do it, was to get that blood flow going and get him going again.
The reason they go out is because both the carotid and the jugular and the neck are closed.
Both closed off, right?
They're both closed off, so no blood's going to the brain. They go out quick. But, if the heart stops or it slows way down when you let them go, if that heart doesn't start beating again right away, maybe it stops completely. So the pat in the back it works. It's effective as external heart massage. Just like when you see the doctor thumping on the chest,
right? When
they're sitting up, they're laying there upright, they pound on their chest with their hand. Same thing. It's just from the back. So I was working anyway. I started working with Hiro on doing these hooks, and I know what it was. Eddie Graham. Guys that weren't marked, they'd get out of the ring. Eddie always positioned himself in the only area outside the ring. They had to walk by him. When they walked by him, he'd sucker punch them in the eyebrow, and he bust them open.
Right.
Bust them open every time. And that always sickened me, because amateur wrestling, I spent 13 years, you're trained how not to hurt people. If you hurt people on a regular basis, you're not going to wrestle. They'll disqualify. You won't be able to wrestle as an amateur if you hurt people. So
I just don't know the mentality of a lot of the guys back in that era of what drove them to just be. I mean, I don't know what other word you want to use than a bully. Just, I'm doing this because I can. Physically, assaulting people and things. I get part of it. A lot of guys defend it by, well, we want to show them this stuff is quote unquote real, so that way when they leave here, they go tell their friends, their family or whatever, this is what happens and things like that. But at the same time, it just seems, uncalled for. I don't know.
There's some sadistic behavior involved, Ray. There's some sadism involved. They're sadistic. They like pain. They like inflicting pain. There's some of that involved with some of these guys. A few years later, in a dressing room talking about it, and Terry Funk was there, and he said what you just said. He said, Bob, you got to mark these guys. Otherwise, they go out, he said, you stretch them and they can barely walk. They go home and lay in bed for a week, and then they go back to the bar. The people say, oh, well, there you are. Well, how's that your tryout? Everybody at the bar knew they were going to be trying out.
Right.
So they said, well, how'd you try? Oh, I went down there. I found out it was all fake, so I didn't do it. They're all just phonies. Well, if they don't have any mark on them, yeah. So if the guy's got a busted eyebrow and that made sense to me. But I said, okay, that makes sense. I don't want to do it. I don't want to set them up for somebody else to do it. Right. So I'm not going to wrestle with marks anymore. Now I'll protect myself. I had to do that a few times. Well, from pro wrestlers, but not from marks. There's an expression that I heard from Eddie Graham for the first time, of a guy thinking he was in a boot factory. When that happens is when a guy, some poor fan, loses it and jumps in the ring like to attack the heel.
Right.
It happened one time in Fort Lauderdale, and it was me and Matsuda against, I don't know who the other two guys were. No, Matsuda was a babyface. What I talk about? Matsuda was tied in the ropes, and me and the other heel had thrown the other guy out. We were pounding on Matsuda, and this guy jumped in the ring.
Fan.
Well, yeah, the fan jumped in the ring.
Right.
Well, within 3.5 seconds, all of us, including the other babyface who had been out of the ring,
right,
miraculously revived. Yeah. All of us, including the referee, were beating the crap out of the guy. Yeah. Just beating the crap. Yeah. One guy comes in. You don't want everybody else to join in, right? To follow him. Yeah. Right, so you really want to discourage that first guy. So yeah. We pounded the crack out, and he went down, booted him out the apron. Then we went right back to our match, just like it had been. I mean, we had to take over on that suit again. He didn't go back and hook himself in the rope.
Sure.
No, we had to go back. But yeah, so that guy, at least for a while, thought he was in a boot factory.
Yeah, that's sound logic. You guys got to protect each other, even if you have to hide the fact that you're doing it. You hear the stories all the time of heels getting so much heat that they're in quite danger trying to get back to the locker room, and a babyface actually has to come back out and kind of attack them and beat them up all the way back to the locker room in order to keep the fans away. So it's crazy times, but it's fun at the same time, as long as you're not, getting shanked or anything.
Well, we got some great stuff to talk about in San Juan, Puerto Rico.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, because I've been there over the years, and that's just that's a horror story for.
It's so funny. Everybody has a horror story from those eras in Puerto Rico. Like everybody had a riot in Puerto. It wasn't like Roddy Piper went down there and had a riot. It's basically everybody who knew how to get any form of heat. They were even like Larry Sharp and Jack Evans from New York. They went down there one time and cut kind of a racist promo on TV leading into a tag team match at one of the stadium shows down there in the late 70s, I think it was. And even they had a near riot on their hands. So, I mean, I can only imagine. I can't wait to get there.
Well, that reminds me, we got time. Sure. I forgot my best Dale Lewis story.
Yeah, I was going to ask you before we got done here, did you finish that Dale Lewis story?
Dale Lewis, I wasn't there, but I heard all about it, and I can see it visually in my mind. I'm not going to lie and say I was there. I had seen the week before, the time before when we were in Puerto Rico, I saw that when Dale, I watched all the matches from the dugout because I was trying to gain experience from watching. Mm-hmm. And I saw that Dale, after his match, instead of coming right back to we were in the baseball stadium, you got the dugouts. Right. Now, from the edge of the dugout to the edge of the other dugout, there's a big fence, for foul balls. So foul balls don't go back and hit the people behind sitting behind the plate. Right. But over the dugouts, it's open. So people could get up on top of the dugouts and actually jump down on the field if they wanted to. So I saw a lot of times there'd be somebody standing up there, but I saw heels like the Missouri Mauler, Larry Hamilton, would just stride towards them, like looking aggressive, like, yeah, come on and jump down, I'll kill you. And nobody ever jumped down. Well, the time I'd been there before, I saw Dale, after his match, he beat a local Puerto Rican guy, wrestler, Dale went looking around the ring for something. He found a chair under the ring. And he took the chair, and when he got by the close to the dugout, he put the chair over his head, like to protect his head from somebody throwing something at him.
Sure.
Well, what he did, he showed everybody he was scared. So the next week, the week it happened, he got up. He was on his way back to. He got within 5 or 6 feet of the dugout. A guy from up on the dugout has probably seen what happened the last time. Jumped down in front of him. Well, Dale's only about 5 feet away. Now, whoever was watching the match had gone back up the tunnel into the clubhouse inside to tell that the match was over. So there wasn't anybody out there to help Dale. But instead of the guy wasn't big. Well, I understand it. He was 280 pounds. So instead of bowling through the guy, just run through him. The guy didn't have a knife or a gun or anything. Dale backed up, and when he backed up, 4 or 5 more people jumped down. Oh, so no. Dale took off. He took off. Now, where he thought he was going, I have no idea. But he took off towards left field.
Maybe he's still running. Is he still running today?
Well, the boys, the word went out, and all the boys from both dressing rooms ran out there.
Okay.
So, as a result, we came back. Masai Saito had his one of his nostrils was ripped. He had to have stitches. Oh. It wasn't ripped off. It was just ripped up away from his face where he'd have it sewed back on.
Jeez.
Missouri Mahler got hit on the upper arm with a pipe that his arm turned yellow and purple and blue for like a month and a half. But various guys got dusted up and bruised and whatever, but they finally got Dale turned around out. And by the time they got there, the rest of us from 200 to 500 people. I'll go with the low one. We're out on the field. I mean, some of them just thought it was fun. They were running around, they want to see what was going on out there.
Right.
And they finally got Dale back to the dressing room, but he didn't have a scratch on him.
What was he got out scot-free. Everybody else,
yeah, didn't have a scratch
and bruised. Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I was told by Sam Steamboat when I first started, don't ever run, and that makes sense to me to this day.
Oh, okay. That's a good sound advice from the original Steamboat. Sam Steamboat is on my list for the next episode of guys I wanted to talk to you about. So that's kind of cool you mentioned him here as we're getting ready to wrap up things. But okay. I feel like a Puerto Rico story is a great way to end an episode. And if you have any more, I look forward to listening to those in the future as well. But yeah, I'm never disappointed whenever somebody begins a story with, down in Puerto Rico, because you just know something good's coming. Yeah, something good's coming.
Something so bad that's really good. You're right.
Yeah. But I'm not trying to knock the island of Puerto Rico. It's crazy how insane and intense the fans were down there for a few decades anyway.
Well, the thing is, they have stateside wrestlers, Puerto Rico's a territory, American territory, but they have the stateside wrestlers always beat the locals. And I think they'll have locals. If I was booking it, I'd have some locals wrestle each other, and I would put some regular matches against, and then maybe the main event. I'd have the main event. They were using Jose Lothario most of the time for the main event because although he was Mexican, he spoke Spanish, and he could make interviews that they could understand. He could.
Sure.
And he was over down there. He drew pretty well.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was a dangerous place. Oh, I got another Puerto Rico story in the baseball arena. Full-blown riot. 50 cops out there during the matches that all ended up in the dressing room. And after the riot started, I went up finally. I asked one of the wrestlers, "Why are all the cops in here? Why aren't they out there getting rid of those people out there?" He said, "They're all hiding in here. That's why they're in here."
Well, there you go. That explains. Yeah. That's enough said there. We'll dive into that one a little deeper if there's more to it next time around.
A lot more.
Oh, I can't wait then. I'm looking forward to it, as I'm sure all of the listeners are. I hope you guys are really enjoying these shows. If anybody's tuned in thinking, "Oh, this guy's just going to tell us about what he did week to week in the ring," no, you guys see it's way more than that. In fact, very little of what you're doing in the ring thus far, and just a whole lot of great stories, Bob. I'm enjoying myself, man.
Well, thank you, Ray. Now, just one last thing on this one about Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Professor Tanaka, Dick Slater, Jim Barnett, Johnny Weaver, just some of the cast of characters.
Oh man!
So yeah,
wow, what a list of characters there. I was going to say, you finish those names. What do they do? All walk into a bar. I was waiting for the punchline. That's quite the unique group of individuals.
Yeah, they're involved with the story. Let's put it that way.
Oh, that's awesome, and it's so great. You have such a vivid memory of who everybody was involved in. Everything. Can't wait to. We'll talk about that at the top of next episode. You guys have that to look forward to next week here on the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob, want to thank you again so much. And remember, guys, you can follow Bob. Go friend him over there on Facebook. Look him up, Bob Roop on Facebook. And of course, you can also follow me on Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And also follow me on Twitter, or X as they call it now. That's at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Bob, once again, thank you so much for letting us be a part, popping a squat on your stoop, so to speak.
Well, thank you, Ray. I enjoy working with you, my friend.
All right, thank you guys so much. Thank you to Bob Roop once more, guys. And we'll be back again next week with more great tales, great tales here on the Wrestling Stoop.